Good afternoon, Craig. How are you?
Hey, Chris, how are you, man? I'm doing good.
This is Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where we invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist. Our goal is to create emotional growth, right?
It is.
Through the medium of a podcast. Be aware it's not a delivery of therapy service in any way, but feedback and discussion is definitely really sought after on our website, throughatherapisteyes.com, and I guess through Facebook too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together.
Sounds like a plan.
Moment for sponsoring agency Metrolina Psychotherapy Associates. They're located in Belmont, North Carolina, serving children, adolescents, adults, and couples. Metrolina, founded in 2010, striving with you to create emotional growth. Check them out at metpsych.com or call at 704-461-8253. Man, we've had some sort of heavy topics lately. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Yes.
I would think that we need to maybe chill it out a little bit with some mindfulness. What do you think about that?
Sounds like a plan to me, man.
You can get our brains rolling pretty hard on these heavy topics, and we don't get to talk enough about. I don't think we got enough time to talk about what do you do, when we're describing all those things. So thought it might be a good fit to patch in a little bit of what is this mindfulness thing and how do you do it. So why do we need mindfulness? What do you think?
Well, how do you really? I've heard the term mindfulness a lot lately. It's mainstream now, right? Mindfulness. But what really is mindfulness? And before we talk about why we need it, what is it?
You ask 10 people, I think you'll get 10 different definitions. It's funny. I was looking around and looking at definitions of it, and it seems like people. Some people get psychobabble put in there and describe different things that we've adopted from what I think has been a long time known, and what you like, the Far Eastern stuff we've talked about a couple times already. A lot of people talk about meditation. A lot of people talk about being calm. Actually, I changed the title of the show because I originally was talking about, having a quiet mind and, being really thoughtful about mindfulness. That isn't even really what it is. There's a lot of concepts out there about what is it.
Is it synonymous with meditation?
Some would probably think it is, but I don't see it that way. I see meditation as definitely a big way to attain mindfulness, but and a lot of the activities and things you'll hear about people talking on are going to be guided imagery. That's something that I do like to do. I actually thought about doing that on the show, but I thought, man, people are going to be driving in their cars or whatever, and I don't want to relax them so much so that...
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do any of that stuff while you're driving, folks.
I reconsidered that. But basically, I kind of think of it as what are we trying to accomplish? And a lot of times we feel real scattered. That's why I named the show, right? Why do I feel so scattered, sometimes? So... thinking about that, we get scattered, feeling about the past, reflecting on things or regretting things or resenting things. And then we get into the future and we worry about them, or we try to recite them and plan for them. And our brains are all the time moving in one direction or the other. And very rarely do we get our minds on the moment, which is really what mindfulness is.
True. Yeah. And I think we talked about the monkey mind on a previous show.
Right.
But that's where, your mind's like a monkey. It's just bouncing from one thing to the other. So I guess you're saying mindfulness is a way to kind of calm that monkey mind down, kind of focus on one thing and stop thinking about the past or the present and just focus on where you are.
Mindfulness.org describes it as the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what is going on around us. My thoughts on it are basically, if you think of the word ness, it's a state, right? Laziness, loneliness.
Mindful.
Right?
Yeah.
State of mind being full. I mean, if you think about the word,
yeah.
Big question is, what is our mind full of? So, my mind can be full of a lot of stuff sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
And oftentimes it ain't very calming. So there's really, I think, a choice of what we fill our mind with, and the concept in the therapy world is really about making your mind full of the moment.
Okay.
Making your mind full of the moment. So, every squirrel catches a nut every now and again, right? When I was a little kid, I don't know, I guess I might have been accused of being a deep thinker when I was a kid. So every squirrel gets a nut. I think that I thought through concepts of time when I was a kid in a really positive and unique way. And I still believe it today. Dude, I was like probably 8 years old thinking about it. But I think I nailed it, honestly. So as a young boy growing up in Wheeling, West Virginia, developed a belief about time that the basic concept is the present is the most important. If you think about it, I think that stands true. When you think of your past, you can learn from your failures, and you can learn from your events. And, when you think of the future, you very much, plan for the future, and that those are both important. But I was thinking as a kid, really, if you focus too much on the past, you miss in the present the ability to change or adjust or, grow from it. And then if you focus too much on the future, you miss the opportunity in the present to guide it or create the future, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Present seems to be, as a kid to me, and still to me as an adult, present being the most important.
So you developed that thought as a child?
I know, it's weird,
Really?
isn't it?
You're a weird dude, man.
I mean, dang. So yeah, we really are just trying to get fully present in the moment. I was curious what you thought about that in your martial arts time. When you're out rolling around. And I don't know much about martial arts. I've always been interested in it, but to me, that's a big part of whatever martial arts discipline you come across. My impression is that in dojos and in whichever disciplines it might be, that's a perfect example of mindfulness, I'm thinking. What's your training teach you about that? What do they talk about when it comes to that? Either, you're into jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jiu-jitsu is really where I've been training. And I'm not sure that we specifically talk about mindfulness or being in the present, but I do know, and I've mentioned this on a past show too, that a lot of the focus is on the breath, focusing on the breath and not thinking about. You have to react and be ready for the next move or plan of attack or defense, if you will. So you're really focused on what's happening right then and there. What's the next opportunity, or how do you attack your opponent in a way to submit or win the match? And you really have to be focused on the here and now in order to do that thing.
Imagine it wouldn't work very well if you're focused on something else when you're on the mat.
Very true, very true. And that's kind of where, at least in my mind, I'm not the expert martial artist. I've only been at it for about a year. But that's kind of what I would say about that.
Yeah, that to me is exactly what we're talking about. It really is. When you're working out or when you're doing something, if you're drifting off in your thoughts and stuff, which we usually do often, you're really not giving 100% on that match.
Right.
And you're probably not going to
get
win.
Beat. Yeah.
You're going to get crushed.
Yeah.
Because it takes a split second to, lose a body position or whatever.
Yes.
It can happen so fast, and they're in a chokehold and you're done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It takes, those athletes, they have an intense pressure on that moment, nothing but that moment. It's impressive to me when you look at all of athletes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to do in regular life. Be fully in the moment, and because it doesn't come naturally, what we do is try to teach that skill. Is mindfulness a skill? Maybe I would say yeah.
I'd say it is, definitely,
because it doesn't come naturally to me.
It doesn't come, and when I've done meditation and yoga and things like that in the past, it's called a practice.
There you go.
Because you're practicing those things with and that's all mind practice.
You'll see a common theme in a lot of the ways I look at mental health factors is a purposeful intention to manage what it is that you're going through at any given point. Mm-hmm. And I think that's huge. It's not sitting back just letting things happen. Mindfulness doesn't I don't know, can we say that mindfulness doesn't naturally occur? I never really thought of that, but
I don't think, in my opinion, and you're the expert here, but I would say mindfulness does not naturally occur. I mean, I think people are constantly bombarded by thoughts and information, and you really have to work at calming the mind down, turning off the TV, turning off the smartphone, or putting it away, something, in order just to weed out all the noise, because it's a constant bombardment of information in today's world.
thinking about what's going to happen, thinking about how am I going to deal with what's going to happen,
Absolutely.
thinking about what happened and oh my gosh, and
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, myself included sometimes, are so focused on what could happen.
the next big thing.
Yeah, and it may never happen. And I think a lot of our news outlets and media and those kind of things focus on what might happen, And,
If I had a penny
those
for every
things-
time I thought of something that might happen in my life, yeah,
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
I'd be wealthy.
Absolutely.
Massive money there. Yeah, so I think that's right. I think it is. I see it. I see it as a skill that you develop, and they talk about mindfulness training. That's kind of what it's really about. And there's lots of demonstrations, of how to be mindful. I think really in anything, mindfulness activities they will teach and train using all sorts of things. So I had an example of that. Might be about the time that mindfulness became really in our mind, as the therapy word goes. Went to a conference, and they demonstrated what they were meaning by mindfulness with a raisin.
With a raisin.
With a raisin.
Okay.
I have never tasted a raisin like I did during those 15 minutes or whatever it was about that, of a demonstration on mindfulness.
Oh, yeah?
There's a lot to a raisin.
Okay.
If you're being, I know, seriously, if you're being mindful about eating a raisin, and they gave us a raisin, I thought about doing that in people's car. They got like nuts sitting around or a chip sitting around or something in their car. You could probably do this and play along if you want. Practice that. And she instructed us and timed us and made sure that we weren't munching the raisin. And you just put it in your mouth and it sits there. And you pay attention to it. I mean, all the little dimples, all the little flavor that comes, all the little skin that starts to come off of the raisin, and then you get in there to the little granules inside the mushy part.
Interesting.
There was so much to this raisin, man. I was like, what? I never knew. I mean, I pop raisins and nuts in my mouth and just chomp them
just
down.
Chomp away, it's gone.
It's done. So that was a demonstration, but it stuck with me. That was years ago, actually, and it really stuck with me because I've never forgotten that raisin. And I must admit, I said I think last week that I don't feel like I'm very good at mindfulness. Because I think it's hard. I think it's hard to get good at this.
It's hard and frustrating. So
Frustrating?
Well, yeah. I mean, some of the ways that I've been taught mindfulness, if you will, is to sit and just breathe. Got to focus on my breath. In two breaths, I'm thinking about whether the Red Sox are winning, or what am my kid doing, or it's hard to really shut it down. And it's in the beginning, especially, you get frustrated and this isn't working, and then you just get up and walk away. But it's a practice. Nobody's. It takes 10 to 12 years on the average to become a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So I'm on day one, I'm not going to be choking people out. It's a practice, and so is mindfulness.
I'm glad you're making that point hard, because it really is something that you're going to struggle with and be frustrated at first, and then as you get better at it, you improve as you would with any skill. So that's cool that you're pointing that out.
Yeah, that's why it's called a practice. Again, I said that earlier, but that's everybody you listen to or talk to about meditation or whatever calls it a practice. Because you're practicing.
So how do we use that in therapy? I mean, we can use that in regular everyday life. I wanted to comment about how we use that in therapy, because it's a good thing to have as a part of your repertoire if you're a therapist out there, really thinking about mindfulness. We haven't talked a lot about anxiety on the show yet. We definitely will. But if you think about what happens with somebody that has anxiety, it's like almost the exact opposite of being mindful. Your thoughts are. We'll talk about how anxiety works, but trust me, it's a biological process in many instances, and you start freaking out when you begin to become anxious. I mean, one thought leads to another, to another, to another, and they bounce into other thoughts and they ramble all through your head. And that's like one of the worst things that you can do when you have anxiety is keep it ensnared and entrapped in your head, because it just exemplifies it, or that's a bad word, accentuates it, builds it up, makes it louder, even to the point of having a panic attack. So there's a cool sort of trick, if you will, that I have gone through individually with people to demonstrate how mindfulness, but we hadn't thought about it as mindfulness, but it is, how mindfulness can absolutely diffuse a panic attack, for instance. Okay? So when you have a panic attack real quick, your heart rate goes way up and your blood pressure goes way up and you start feeling hot and clammy and you really get like intensely panicky, thinking the world's going to end or some disastrous thing's going to happen and you got to get out of this room. You feel claustrophobic. I mean, it's scary. People have gone to emergency rooms thinking they're having a heart attack with this. So what we teach people, or what we show people, is to use your senses to bring yourself, because you'll get sort of disassociated and leave the room almost. So you want to bring your senses, use your senses to bring yourself back into the room. So when you're breathing hard and short of breath and freaking out, you look around in very clear detail what you can see, and you say, even out loud, 5 things that you can see. So right now I can see the red button on that piece of equipment beeping. I can see the white piece of fabric on the red fabric we have here in the studio. I can see the rope on the blind over on the other side of the room. And I can see your gray hair right in the middle of your forehead.
You must be imagining things.
Then you go to your hearing and you listen. I can hear a hum from what must be the air. I heard my finger move. And I touched a chord. I heard that slight bump. And then you can move to your smell. You can maybe smell things. It's good to bring a rose or a flower. Smell it. And then you can get taste. Right? So you use your senses, and then you repeat that if you're still freaking out. 3 more things that you can see. 3 more things that you can hear. 3 more things that you can feel. Feel my pants leg. Feel the chair. And you'd be amazed, like it snaps people back directly out of a panic attack, brings them right into the room. And that's really the power of mindfulness for people that have stressed out, scary, intense panic attacks.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really, it's like almost magical.
Yeah. Normally, I've experienced panic attacks myself in the past, 15, 20 years ago, whatever. And normally my experience with that has been people who have panic attacks or have had panic attacks normally get prescribed drugs.
Quick.
Yeah. So to hear that there's a way just to kind of bring yourself back into the present moment to deal with that is very interesting. And I do know somebody who went through an experience with panic attacks, and instead of putting her on a prescription, her doctor prescribed breathing. He told her to focus on her breath,
cool.
and that's the way that she was able to lick the panic attack, if you will.
Breathing is a big part of that too.
Yeah.
There's a few other things that you're just trying to get yourself reoriented,
right?
Because when anxiety is packing full that way, it'll just take you away. I mean, of course, future disastrous event is about to happen.
Yes,
yeah, it's just not. So mindfulness is a cool way, to incorporate into not just daily life, but specific mental health factors that people are struggling with, but also personal relationships. Let's pivot and talk about that. Mindfulness and purpose and personal and close, particularly relationship. So I've thought about that in a lot of what helps make therapy helpful. I don't know if I had mentioned that before. It might have been episode 1. So forgive me if I'm being redundant, but I like to supervise younger or newer therapists. And inevitably, whenever I'm developing a supervisory relationship, I always want to make sure that, the new therapist really understands the power and the importance of what they're doing. And the tip here is that, mindfulness is a big part of that. And I don't think we realize that a lot, but think of a normal conversation. You might be thinking about what you're getting ready to say, but you're listening to me, but you're waiting for a moment for me to stop so that you could say what you're going to say. Yeah. And then I'll stop. And you go.
Yep.
And then I'm waiting for you to stop. It's really, we're in our own head and we're not really fully listening to what's going on with the other person. And that's the way a normal conversation occurs. So when you go into a different situation, a young therapist might not really realize, my gosh, for the first time in this person's life, they are looking at somebody who really is, for way more than 37 seconds, listening and focused and completely dialed in on what you're saying. That just doesn't happen. So, there's a lot of things that helps therapy to be effective, and maybe we'll go into that in more detail someday, but man, that's a powerful part of a human relationship that we so rarely get in our normal day-to-day lives. So, yeah, in personal relationships, how about if we try to get a little bit of mindfulness? What do you think that would look like?
What do I think it would look like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that it is being present and tuned in to the person that you're with. And so, like, the smartphone these days, you go into a restaurant, you might see a family sitting there, and every single one of them's on their smartphone.
We love our phones.
And not paying attention to each other. And sometimes I'm guilty of that. My daughter often tells me, Daddy, get off your phone, and I have to put my phone down or
I've never seen you with your phone.
To be present with her,
I say that with sarcasm.
Definitely, sarcasm, right? So I think mindfulness, being present in the moment, not worrying about what's going to happen next, and just focusing on the person that you're with is a big thing for relationships.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It triggered my thought from something you said earlier, and it hit me twice, and I missed it. So let's go back, and then we'll come back to the relationship thing. You said that one of the things that's very frustrating about trying to be in the moment, is your mind's just moving here and the thought drifts in. When you start focusing on mindfulness and really start trying to teach it, and I would say with meditation kind of as well, there's lots of different types of meditation. And that's a normal experience to have thoughts drift in. And I think that we're really hard on ourselves about that. You said frustrating. I think we need to normalize that. That's okay. Yes. That's actually a part of being mindful.
Yes. Yeah. Some of my experiences with meditation teachers, have been that way. You're not trying to stop the mind. You're trying to observe it. And so
exactly.
Like it's, Mark Devine, I've mentioned him before, Navy SEAL, and teaches mental toughness techniques. He calls it the witness. So basically your witness is just kind of sitting back and watching the mind and what it's doing. Oh, there's a thought. That's interesting. And just kind of letting that one go. And being able to see, because a lot of times we get a thought and we just run with it, and bam, zoom, we're gone, But some techniques that I've learned personally are just to watch those thoughts, be aware of them, and then let them go.
And turn off the judgment of them.
Yes.
You've heard people, I don't know, it can get a little bit hooky kooky, I guess, when people talk about it sometimes, but it's true. Let feelings come, let feelings go, let thoughts come, let them go. You're drifting in and out of that, and, it can be dreamy almost, but it's okay as a part of mindfulness to allow whatever comes up to be a part of what is.
Yes.
And I think people really don't understand that. Like I said, I renamed the show. I originally was like, how to have a quiet mind.
Yeah.
Not necessarily mindful.
Yeah, exactly. And I may be I may be speaking out of turn or whatever, or maybe off topic a little bit, but like emotions that come up, people say, oh, don't be mad, or don't be sad.
Drives me nuts.
Let those emotions come up, deal with them, and let them go, because those emotions are normal in certain situations.
It's and really you're doing a disservice to yourself probably if you're not allowing those emotions to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's go back to relationships, right? So it is important to have mindfulness in relationships, and I think that, well, think about this, right? So if you really work with this skill and you become more fully present when you're really talking to somebody, I'm curious what your spouse would think about that. What would your child really think about that? Your boss really going to appreciate your productivity and mindfulness. Even a friend. I even thought about your creator, when you're praying. You're just being with that person, your neighbor, or really anybody you're talking about. How much would they really appreciate your mindfulness on the moment with them?
Yeah. I'm sure it's huge, And I guess the big joke about men and women is men never listen, I think I saw a joke the other day, and it said, my wife said, "Hey, you never listen to a thing I say." And
right.
I thought that's an interesting way to start a conversation. That was that was a joke. She'd been talking. The guy hadn't been listening. She says, "You never listen to anything I say." And he's, that's an interesting way to start a conversation.
Right.
But man, just think about how happy a lot of wives would be if husbands were just mindful and present,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be big in a lot of cases.
When you're on a date and you're trying to catch the interest of somebody, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, it was so great. They made me feel like I was the only one in the room."
Yeah.
That's mindfulness.
Right.
That's really being present with somebody, and it feels so nice.
Yeah. Turn your phone off or leave it in the car.
It really feels nice to receive. Absolutely. Probably a good date tip.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is.
And it's interesting too. It's not only just for the other person, but what's the effect on yourself? When you're really fully present with somebody, that's calming. Yeah. I don't have to worry about that next thing.
Yeah.
Whatever happened just happened. It's okay. Like that's a peaceful state to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Just, what is the song? No worries. I'm on the beach. I'm smooth sailing.
Yeah.
I love those songs where they can point out, losing yourself. Lose yourself in the moment. Who sings that? That's a good one. That'll hype you up.
I know that one.
Oh man, it's a good one. Lose yourself in the moment. Oh, Eminem.
Really?
Eminem, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I've never heard it.
Oh, come on now.
It's a different story, I guess.
So, I think it serves us very well to think about, what it does with the other people, how it affects relationships, how it affects ourselves and our experience, how it can affect our mental health conditions and experiences, and our perspective on time and how time works.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said, how does that affect yourself? I would imagine there's tons of benefits for just being present with yourself instead of constantly worried about what's going to happen next, or what's going to happen in politics or whatever that might be. Those things you think about are stressors, which increase stress hormones and all those other things, and can cause health issues.
Can really work yourself up. So I hope we've given a little bit of an idea of mindfulness, what it is, and a little bit about what it is and what it can do for you, and a little bit about how to attain it. Because, I was thinking, when people think about mindfulness, it seems mysterious, it seems weird, it seems, like people don't even know what it's not. It's really simple and daily. I like your word, practice.
Yes.
So, sandwiches. How about a sandwich between last topic and the next topic, with mindfulness being in the middle of it?
Okay.
So I was thinking we might talk about suicide risk factors and homicidal risk factors when we get together again. And, what we struggle with, particularly as it relates to homicidal risk factors. We've mentioned mass media or mass murder events and things. And man, that is a twisted reality that people get into, and something I think people are very curious about. So PTSD, mindfulness, how about homicidal and suicidal risk factors next?
You're the boss.
Sound interesting?
Sounds interesting to me, for sure.
All right. Well, that's what we'll head to, I think. Unless something happens, we'll get to that. Appreciate you hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Let me say a few things before we hang up. This is the first show we've recorded since we've actually gone live on iTunes and Stitcher and other places to find podcasts. If you guys are enjoying our show, we would certainly appreciate it if you subscribed and leave us a 5-star rating on those particular platforms. Also, too, you can find show notes and all of our social media channels on throughatherapisteyes.com. The blog tab has show notes for each individual show. You can also listen to the show right there in the website if you'd like to do it that way. And I think that's it, Chris. You got anything else before we wrap her up today?
All right, man. That'll be it.
Okay, we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks. Take care.